Thanks, Charlotte, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for welcoming everyone. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ronan McDonald, and I am the founder of Cred, and we work at the intersection of education and technology. And I'm very grateful to Charlotte and Shloka, two students at the University of New South Wales, whose idea was to create this 30-day mental health and wellbeing challenge specifically designed to support students at this time. And what our intention is to create a space to support people to navigate this time based on their own individual circumstances and based on the pace that they want to go at. And we do recognize that everyone is experiencing this time incredibly differently, and that students face their own unique challenges. So we're really here to create a space to support them. We're also aware that we have many students who are living away from home, who are away from families, and many people living in isolation. So we're really passionate about creating a sense of connection and to support students at this time so they do feel that they're not alone. And there's a sense of pressure on people to use this time to be building new skills and to be working at a kind of peak performance. But we're aware that not everyone is at a right time in their individual circumstances. So if it is appropriate for people, we want to use this time to support people to build some strong habits. So this is week 3, as Charlotte said, of the challenge. We started in week 1 with a focus on move. And then last week we spoke about the importance of food and mood and its impact on our mental health and well-being. And it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce Mick Hase to speak about the topic of purpose and why having a sense of purpose is really important at this time. So I was introduced to Mick about this time last year. I went to see an event that he hosted called 17 SDG, where he is introducing the importance of the United Nations Global Goals to organizations and why they should incorporate the global goals and a sense of purpose into the way of their being. And Mick is also the founder of Sip for Sip Coffee and a facilitator with living.org, a mental health and wellbeing organization. So my absolute pleasure to welcome Mick. Mick, thanks for joining us, and I'd love to hand over to you to lead us through your talk, and then we'll facilitate a Q&A in the community afterwards. Thanks, Mick. I'll stop sharing now and invite you to share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Ronan. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. We're good to go. Excellent. So yeah, look, thank you for inviting me along, Ronan and the team. I thought the best way to cover off this topic of purpose, which is, I guess, a bit of a wow word in the last couple of years for me, is literally just to tell my story about how I have engaged, I guess, myself, my life, and my business interests around the idea of purpose and doing business as a place for good. And then ideally how we can kind of link that back into, relative context for you guys as uni students. So, thank you for your time, and I'll try and fly through this fairly quickly so we can, open into Q&A and use that time as much as possible. So the screen that you can see at the moment, this is where I live. This is winter on the Gold Coast. I thought it'd be pretty relevant to start with that because really the ocean is where I belong. I surf at that beach pretty regularly. Not today, unfortunately, but that photo was taken yesterday morning on my morning coffee run after dropping the kids off at school. And it's the ocean and this bar particularly, or this area, plays a part to the story I'm about to tell you. So, well, pretty relevant to have it there. So, after chatting with Ronan about what is it would you like me to actually talk about today, we really landed on the idea of me sharing with you my story and kind of discovery of these 3 things of giving, purpose, and impact, and particularly how these 3 things over the last few years have changed the way that I actually do things, from being a parent to just living a normal everyday life, to also how I run myself in my businesses and the various things that I do for work. So This is pretty much what takes up most of my time. I am a dad of 2 young boys, married, pretty normal Australian life, I guess you'd say. I'll give you one guess who the wild one is out of the bunch. But so, these guys are really the centerpiece for what takes up most of my time. And, becoming a dad is certainly one thing that made me start to think outside the box about, I guess, the bigger picture. And I was looking through, I like to use images whenever I'm doing talking. So these are basically what I do for a job. I am I guess you'd call me an entrepreneur. I am someone that generally likes to have a finger in a few different pies, and I do operate a few different jobs. So as Ronan mentioned, last year I founded a business model called 17X, which is a speaking event, very TEDx style speaking event designed to engage the business community and the community in general with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I run an online business that I've just jumped into this year called Punish Natural Nutrition. I run a consulting company called Dice Consulting. Sip for Sip Coffee is an e-commerce business designed to impact the world through coffee. And then off the back of that, I also do a little podcast, which is a bit of fun. And I also facilitate to the crew here from the Gold Coast called Livin', and running their Livin' Well mental health workshop in schools and workplaces all over Australia. So a pretty busy lifestyle at the moment, on top of being a dad and all those kind of things. And this image is one that I decided would best represent my headspace at the moment, my mental health and my physical health. It's a very colourful space. It's one that really, for me, shows that I've got a lot going on. The different colours representing the different focuses that I have, but generally fairly positive, and a lot of things happening. But as a business owner, it wasn't always like that. There were some times where it was a little bit more like this. And my story is going to explain a little bit about how maybe my visual representation around what my mental health was like a few years ago, and how I managed to get from there into, a nice, colourful, more vibrant, positive feeling. So we go back to that picture of the bar. This is where it all starts for me. So the red arrow is where I was in a boat with some friends a few years ago, and we managed to roll that boat, and it turned upside down, and we got hit by a wave. And the black arrow is where we were picked up by the rescue helicopter. It was nighttime, and we were sitting on an upturned boat, trying to work out how we were going to get back to shore, and trying to make sure that we weren't going to potentially go in a really bad direction. So luckily we were rescued. Now, as an ocean going guy, as someone that has spent his life swimming and surfing, I wasn't overly concerned with the situation at the time, simply because for me, I was fairly invincible as a young Australian guy. The trickiest part, though, in the moment of realization that really got me during that experience was that at the time, this little fella was inside this belly, and my wife was 8 months pregnant at the time. So needless to say, when we got home from the rescue, I got in a lot of trouble from my wife for rolling a boat and having to get rescued out at sea. But it also gave me a bit of a reality check that, maybe there are things more important than just trying to get all the right answers and the right work and career and chasing success, whatever that looks like. So it was a little bit of a wake-up call. And then not too far after that, I had a second one, which for me was also a real turning point, which here's Renee. If there are any med students on the call, you'll notice that this is my wife finishing off her last chemotherapy treatment. Not long after we had our second child, Renee had stage 3 bowel cancer, and presented us with a really bumpy 12 months going through it all. She did manage to keep her beautiful long curly hair, but it was a real, I guess, a bit of an awakening for us as a young family, to start thinking about maybe maybe what's actually important to us as as we go through this fun adventure called life. And off the back of having a stressful experience rolling a boat and having to get rescued, and then dealing with running a small family and businesses with a sick wife at the time. As a young invincible man, I started to go into these dark places, and perhaps my mental health really started to take a turn at those stages. Through some help and chatting to the right people, words like stress and anxiety started to come up. Trying to have all the right answers all of the time. As a business owner and a dad, really starting to realize that stress and anxiety and what we can put on ourselves off the back of certain situations that we may have been through can be really confronting. So through some help, and my story continues, that I kind of went back to this thought that an old director, a lady that I used to work for, and I started to ask myself things like, there has to be a better way of doing things. The reality check of becoming a dad, and life-threatening boat rollovers and cancer quite close to us. It really did give me what we call an aha moment. I talk to a lot of people on my podcast, and we try and unpack what is their aha moment that made them decide that, hey, we need to do things a little bit differently. So the first thing that I landed on, and I have 3 takeaways for you today. The first thing is, landing on the idea of giving. So a lady that I used to work for years ago in a business college, I remember quite vividly talking about when you find yourself in a block or in a performance block, or you find yourself not performing or stressed, or in a situation that you're possibly even feeling out of control. If you can find a way to be of service to somebody else, it can create a huge unblocking moment for yourself. Maybe not immediately. However, taking the focus off your own pressures and the pressures that you may be putting on yourself, or the situation that you find yourself in, and focusing on a way that you can be of service to others and give. And giving doesn't mean money. It can be giving of time and giving of value, of just lending an ear to somebody can be enough. But looking at ways that you can be of service is a huge way to unpack a situation of stress or anxiety that you may find yourself in. So I went on to that adventure and kind of followed that down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And I did land on these things, these amazing global goals, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that I'm sure that any of you guys that have been connected with Cred for a little while, you've no doubt heard of these through Ronan. He's a huge advocate for the global goals. And I started to look at how can I actually engage with these in a productive way, not so much just as an individual, but also in business. How can we create a business that is successful and profitable in its own right, but is also creating a meaningful impact in the world? And again, going back to the idea of, if we are, building a business or building a community, and we are looking at creative ways to do things differently, how can we be of service to other people or the planet to make success come along? And so these global goals provided me with a terrific framework to really reposition the way that I do things. So I then, from that one, moved on to 17X, which has been a huge learning curve and a heap of fun. It's where Ronan and I did first meet each other last year in Sydney. And 17X is a series of events set up very much like a TEDx talk, designed to engage the community and businesses with the global goals, and look at how we can bring the idea of purpose and impact and business for good into the mainstream, and using those global goals as our guiding light and as our benchmark. And that turned out to be an Australian tour last year, and we hit 5 cities and had hundreds of people come through the event, and some amazing guest speakers. And I set up the event to not be about me. So one of the main things was, I'm setting up this new business, and I do not want it to be about me and me trying to fill my own agenda. I want to build a platform that is about bringing purpose to other people, providing value to other people, and giving and being of service. And so the events are designed to do that. We get speakers on stage, we engage with brands, and the whole idea is that we are bringing value to this community through collaboration for the global goals. And that's exactly what we did. We connect with amazing brands all over the place to look at how can we work with them in a value-driven way to create sustainable impact together and interest and collaboration in the global goals. And that was a real, I guess, learning curve and a crazy adventure that I had a heap of fun on. And we're still looking at 2020. Obviously, COVID slowed us down a little bit, but the adventure continues. And this idea of creating an event that is designed to give and be of service is a hugely rewarding thing for me. And it's extremely therapeutic for my own mental health. And that really does bring me to the next point is, and this is a key lesson and takeaway that I took from last year's pilot programs of 17X around Australia, was this idea of connected purpose. Now, purpose is I guess you would call it a bit of a power word. It is a word that could be defined in many different ways. And it's also a word that's very easy to throw around and sound, like you're really onto it. However, for me, what I just realized through the events is that purpose is a way that we can actually engage collective interest and collective collaboration and people working together on a bigger picture. And the amazing thing that it does for us as individuals, guys, is that when you can connect yourself to a purpose that is bigger than yourself, the I becomes a we so fast. And we would see it time and time again in our events, is by putting a bunch of people in a room that are all thinking about things that are not egocentric. They're all thinking about things that are outside themselves. They're wanting to engage with other people that are doing the same, and they're collectively wanting to work towards these 17 goals. The I certainly becomes a we so fast. We would see it after the events. The collaboration of people immediately was huge, because all of a sudden you're not focused on what do I want. You can, what can we do together and what can we create? And this is a major win. So we start asking questions through the event. What if we did things a new way? What if we did things where we weren't focused on the bottom line, or we weren't focused on what can I get, and we were focused on, hey, what can we create together? Because we all know that if we're doing that, then hey, the things that I want will eventually turn up anyway, which are great. So it does continually, time and time again, bring me back to these global goals, which is such a terrific framework. So I urge you, if you're not engaged with these, jump onto globalgoals.org. All the information's there, and familiarize yourself with these amazing frameworks. So one of the things that I do with everything that I'm involved with now is look to bring impact to either the community, an individual, or things that are outside the business that we can actually make some change at with the world. And one of the things that we do is look at how we can create a giving impact through simply by running our business. So, and I do this, here's 3 examples here. So with our 17X events, every time we sold a ticket, we would give meals to children or provide clean water access. So there was an idea that simply by attending our events and engaging with our brand, our attendees could feel directly that they were making a difference, not only to themselves and the people that were there at the events, but also to, hey, some much needed projects all around the world. Recently, I took over this nutrition business, Punish Nutrition, and one of the first things I did was introduce a 1-for-1 giving program. So a way that we can use our business again to create amazing and sustainable impact for projects around the world. And Sip for Sip Coffee does the same thing. Every time we sell coffee, we donate water. We're up to 32,500 days worth of water. So real, I guess, examples that I just wanted to show you that as a business in 2020 and as a business leader in 2020, there are ways to engage, I guess, the old way of doing things with perhaps the new way of thinking and the new way of delivering. So, and then lastly, my work with Livin is something that I've jumped on board with throughout 2019 and this year, which has been an amazing experience in working with presenting a 45-minute Living Well program that really talks about normalizing the conversation that surrounds mental health, breaking the stigma, so to speak. And we get to travel around to schools all over Australia and speak from anywhere from 20 to 300-400 people at a time. And the reason I wanted to show this was it's such a perfect example as to how being of service to other people and providing your time or providing this content is a way that obviously does great things for the audience, but it really does great things for me. I know that if I'm out there delivering this Living Well program, my stresses and my own anxieties seem to fall away. It's the idea of giving and making a difference to other people through these programs has really done a huge amount for me. So again, that circles back to the idea of looking at ways to be of service if you find yourself stressed or in a tough spot, can really do wonders for your own mental health and well-being. So, and that does really tie into the last takeaway that I talk about is impact. Looking at we're in the technological age, we're in global community, and it's possible in 2020 to make success become aligned with impact and vice versa. And the reality is, and the data's there and the proof is there, that if you are impacting others, you are undoubtedly impacting yourself. Whether it's in mental health, physical health, whether it's in making a difference in small or large ways, if you are there and in a position of purpose that's really authentic and you are genuinely there to make a difference, you will absolutely make a huge difference to yourself. And so really they're my three main lessons that I wanted to share with you today. And I can understand and I can appreciate that many of you are students and probably not so much in the stage of life where I am, of running businesses and being a dad and all these things. And you're possibly scratching your head saying, okay, how does this relate to me? I'm a uni student. This doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me in where I'm at right now. And I totally get that. So the context that you just need to address this stuff is simply just replace the idea of business with you. Yes, in my experience along the way is that businesses is simply about managing people anyway. And if you take any of these key learnings and just simply change the context from business to yourself, they apply exactly the same. And I can say that I've been in where you are. I've graduated from uni in my 20s. I know where you're at. And one of the things that I would like to finish on is that you do have time. You have so much time. There is so much that you can achieve in 6 to 12 months, let alone the next 10 years, that you do not have to have all the answers right now. You do not have to have it all sorted out. If you are graduating or you're about to graduate, I can appreciate that it can be a bit of a scary time. However, please understand that you have so much time. You have so much time, and to relax and just look at ways to be of service, and the answers will come. And don't forget that if you don't get it right the first time, you can just go again. You've got so much time. I can't stress that enough. And then lastly is just have a heap of fun, guys. You've done so much work. You're in a really emotional kind of roller coaster of being engaged at university, whether you're midway through starting or finishing. I know a lot of you are international students. You're far away from home. I get it. Look at ways that you can have fun and release the pressure. That's me with a mohawk surfing in Indonesia. That's not exactly a professional look, but it's me having fun, living a life that makes me smile every now and then, as well as working hard. So that's it. I hope a couple of key takeaways and lessons from my story works for you and brings some colourful, positive thoughts to where you're at right now. Keep moving forward.
Mick, yeah, that was absolutely awesome. Thank you very much for sharing an amazing story. And I love how you were so open, Mick. You always are, and you make it fun and engaging. We invite anyone who has a question for Mick. Please do feel free to come off mute. This is about how we support you, and I know Mick want to make it meaningful for you as students. So does anyone have a question for Mick? that you'd like to ask? Now, while you're thinking about it, Mick, I'll start off with one. Mick, where's a good starting point for like sort of a student? And I know I'm 46 now. I wasn't thinking about this kind of stuff when I was 21 and 22. And you talked about like people have time, but where's a good starting point for our students?
I really do come back to the idea of looking outside yourself. We spend so much time, particularly in that age group. You know, you've come out of school, you've gone into university for whatever reason, whether it's your own or expectations of family or community or, you know, whatever's made you take this step. And if you find that you're in a space of stress, or there is some something that you're feeling less control of, is just looking at outside yourself. So whether it's getting engaged with communities that are perhaps not something that you normally do, doing something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, making that stretch, getting into exercise if you're not exercising, doing things that I guess aren't normal for you and something that's a little bit different, but really looking at getting outside yourself, and the answers will start to flow. And I absolutely stress that looking at how you can be of service. And it doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to go and solve the world's problems, but just looking at ways that you can contribute. And quite often I've seen it time and time again that, and even for myself, is the minute you stop focusing on yourself and start looking at other things, other people, other communities, you know, whether it's the earth itself, looking at how you can become more sustainable, whatever it is, the answers tend to start to flow, and they turn up. And that's where people say the universe answered the questions. Well, you know, it's you took a bit of pressure off, and the answers start to come up.
Thanks, Mick. I know Chiara has a question. Chiara, can I invite you to come off mute, and please do feel free to ask Mick a question.
Thanks, Ronan, and thanks, Mick. It's really interesting, useful to hear your story and your perspective. My question is, does it ever go too far in that kind of service of others that you become kind of too exhausted or too like stressed on the other side of the panel, I guess, to be able to do all those good things and serve others? Is that something that you've experienced, and what your kind of approach is to address that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, you have to be aware of yourself, and self-care is a huge part of managing mental health. We talk about it in our Living program that, you know, you can't help others if you're not looking after yourself first. You have to fill your own cup and make sure that it stays full. So acknowledging when you are feeling flat, or you are, you know, burning out or using too much energy, but also just realizing that it's okay to say no, and it's okay to take a break. So I know for me, I've put myself in positions where I've been hugely committed, and you can start to feel guilt when you go, okay, I need to say no to somebody. I need to say no to that Live and Well program, or I just need to take a week away from all the commitments that I've made and take some time out for me. So absolutely 100% that shows up, and you wouldn't be human if it didn't. It's a natural part of life that we all hit our maximum sometimes. But self-care is absolutely, I highly recommend mindfulness. I highly recommend, if you're not doing it, go and research some great tools for self-care, because then that gives you the presence to realize when perhaps you are pushing the limit a little bit too hard. And then it also circles back to my last slide there about having fun. If you're doing things that aren't fun, you're not going to enjoy it, and you'll burn out faster. So make sure you're having fun along the way.
Thanks, Mick. And thanks, Chiara. I know we have reached 2 p.m. and if you do need to leave, thank you very much for joining us here today. Mick, can you stay on for another couple of minutes? Is that okay? Mick's got a couple more minutes. So I'm just briefly going to hand to Shloka to just talk about what some of the next steps are for the rest of the week. Shloka, can I have...
Hi, guys. Yeah. Hi, guys. So this week we had our tea purpose, and I really want you all to share your experiences in terms of photos or stories or videos, however you want to express yourself, on our Facebook group and or on your wall. Just tag us at Cred, and we'll be happy to see how we have helped you guys. And I hope you get inspired by other stories as well. We would all love that if you would sign up and use the Cred mobile app, and keep updating it every day. Use cues that we have updated in the app, and join the Cred community students on Facebook, where you can share all the things that I spoke to you about. Please also join us on Friday, 1:30 p.m. This week, we'll be talking about the same theme, purpose, and we have a lot more exciting things coming up next week and the week after. So stay tuned on our social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you, Shloka. And again, a huge acknowledgement to yourself and Charlotte for creating this